Good evening, everyone, or good morning for those of you who are in the US or in other parts of the world. Thank you very much for joining us tonight for another lecture at ARIT. And our speaker for tonight is Professor Ayfer Karakaya-Stamp, and she will be presenting her project, Alevi-Bektashi Digital Archive, a project of cultural preservation. Ayfer Karakaya-Stamp earned her PhD in History and Middle Eastern Studies from the Harvard University in 2008, and she's currently an Associate Professor of History at William and Mary in Virginia. Her scholarly interests encompass the late medieval and early modern Middle East, the social and cultural history of the Ottoman Anatolia, Ottoman and Safavi borderland, Sufism, nonconformist religious movements, and of course, Kızılbaş Alevi-Bektashi communities, as well as women and gender within Islamic societies. She particularly has a prolific record of scholarly works on the Alevi and Bektashi history, and just to name a few, she authored the book The Kızılbaş Alevis in Ottoman Anatolia, Sufism, Politics and Community, which came out of the Edinburgh University Press in 2019-2020. And in Turkey, some of her work was featured in the book Vefailik, Bektaşilik, Kızılbaşlık, Alevi kaynaklarını, tarihini ve tarih yazımını yeniden düşünmek, which came out of the Bilgi University Press, first in 2015, and then in 2022, the fourth edition of the book came out. Currently, along with Professor Cemal Kafadar of Harvard University, Professor Stamp is leading a digital humanities project called the Alevi-Bektashi Digital Archive, dedicated to the recording and preserving documents and manuscripts found in the family archives of the Alevi saintly lineages. And this project earned her an ARIT NEH fellowship in the fall of 2023. And right now she's back in Virginia to her teaching and faculty duties. And we are delighted that she'll be presenting her research project to ARIT tonight. So without further ado, I would like to give the mic to her. And as usual, after her presentation, we will be welcoming questions from you. Thank you.
Wait, so let me start my slideshow again. I don't know why I stopped it, but my apologies. All right, so here we go. All right, so thank you, Zeynep Hanım, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining us. I should inform you in advance that I've been feeling a little under the weather for the last few days, so there is no guarantee that I won't sneeze or wipe my nose, so my apologies for that. As Zeynep Hanım said, today I'm going to talk to you about a digital humanities project that I am leading in collaboration with Professor Cemal Kafadar at Harvard University. I have to say this project has been in my thoughts and dreams for many, many years. In fact, I'll go as far as saying that it's my grand mission to accomplish this project before I depart this life. A moment I hope is still far off, but we can never be sure. So, this is a project that is really dear to me. More than 25 years ago, when I was a graduate student interested in Alevi-Bektashi history, the dominant tendency, the prevailing tendency was to perceive the Alevi tradition as a vague manifestation of syncretistic folk Islam transmitted primarily through oral means. The assumption was that the Alevis had no written sources and very little in terms of distinctive material culture worth the attention of historians. While there are still individuals and scholars who hold on to these perceptions of Alevi-Bektashi history, there has been a significant shift in this perception and attitude in recent decades. Indeed, today we can speak of a burgeoning field of Alevi-Bektashi studies, and more particularly Alevi-Bektashi history. In fact, it probably wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Alevi-Bektashi studies has become one of the most popular topics in Ottoman Turkish studies in recent years. That said, as a field, the Alevi-Bektashi studies still has a long way to go, and the creation of an Alevi-Bektashi digital archive, as we are trying to do with this project, will immensely help with the field moving forward. Before we dive into the details of the project in terms of its goals, preliminary design, progress we have made so far, and challenges we face in its accomplishment, I'd like to provide a brief introduction to Alevi-Bektashis for those of you who may not be familiar with them as much. The Alevis, along with the related Bektashi Sufi order, form a marginalized ethno-religious minority with smaller pockets of related communities in neighboring countries, particularly in the Balkans. While estimates vary, it's widely believed that they constitute approximately 15% of Turkey's population. However, this number is probably declining rapidly due to assimilation, the Alevis' disproportionately high tendency to emigrate to Western countries, not to mention lower birth rates among them. Historically, the Alevi-Bektashi tradition originated from diverse mystical movements converging in 13th century Anatolia and crystallized during the late 15th and early 16th centuries. Its primary adherents emerged among the Turkmen, Kurdish, and Zaza populations. There are, of course, also Arabic-speaking Alevis or Alawites, also known as Nusayris, but they are a sociologically and historically distinct community, albeit with some sort of similarities in terms of their religious outlook with the so-called Anatolian Alevis. Our focus in this project is the so-called Anatolian Alevis, and unfortunately, our project does not include the Arabic-speaking Alevis. But you never know. Maybe one day we'll expand it to also include them. All right. So the Alevis, like mainstream Shia, share an attachment to Ali and the first Shia Imam and his 11 successors, but they are distinct by their markedly esoteric teachings, which closely align with Sufism and several pre-Islamic mystical traditions. They are set apart from both the Sunni and the Shia Muslims in their non-observance of formal obligations of normative Islam and their unique communal liturgy attended by both men and women, which contrasts with the strict gender segregation rules prescribed in Sharia, in Islamic law. And here's a scene from a Kızılbaş Alevi communal ritual in a rural Cemevi. Cemevi being, of course, the places of worship for the Alevis. Historically, Alevis have faced persecution due to their religious and political nonconformity, and they continue to be socially and politically marginalized in the modern Turkish Republic, despite the formally secular nature of the Republican regime. Hence, they had to practice their religion mostly in secret due to fears of harassment by their Sunni Muslim neighbors and state authorities. In the 1950s and 60s, Alevis began migrating from their villages to big cities, but Alevism remained a taboo subject in Turkey until the Alevi cultural revival of the late 1980s and early 90s. The Alevi cultural revival marked a significant milestone in the establishment of Alevi-Bektashi studies as an independent field of inquiry, as it granted researchers unprecedented access to traditional Alevi rituals and cultural artifacts. This development was particularly transformative for the study of Alevi-Bektashi history, as it led to the surfacing of a new corpus of written sources originating from within the Alevi-Bektashi communities themselves. These sources, of course, are extremely valuable. They include documents and manuscripts, which have been preserved for generations in the private archives of Alevi-Bektashi saintly lineages known as Ocaks. and they represent a wealth of previously inaccessible historical material. The emergence of this new body of written material not only dispels the myth that Alevi communities solely relied on oral transmission of their culture, but also provides historians with fresh avenues for exploring Alevi-Bektashi history and religiosity from an internal perspective. It's these written sources that form the backbone of my research of Alevi-Bektashi history, and the same written material also serve as the foundation of our digital archive project. Thus, the current project in many ways is an extension of my previous work. And in that sense, you can say it started many years ago, but it was only recently that I, together with Professor Kafadar, began looking into it in a more systematic fashion and try to frame it as a serious digital humanities project. So now let's turn to discussing some of the details of the project itself. So what's the objective of this project, or why this project and why now? Several considerations and concerns animate this project. To begin with, it's commonly recognized that the demographic presence of Alevis in their historical and rural settlements and their artistic, cultural, and religious traditions have been in rapid decline since the mid-20th century. In fact, today, most Alevis live in urban centers and lead entirely secular lives and carry their Alevi identity as an ethno-religious identity rather than a religious one. This decline in cultural and religious traditions can be attributed to factors such as pressures of modernization, assimilationist policies, and the migration of Alevis to major cities and Western countries for economic and political reasons. Consequently, the Alevi villages and sacred sites are also at risk of disappearing or facing cultural appropriation. Furthermore, and in some ways even more importantly for the purposes of this project, Alevi written sources preserved in the private archives of Alevi Dede families. Dede literally meaning elder is a title given to members of Alevi saintly lineages. These documents and manuscripts are also at risk of disappearing or being lost. These documents and handwritten works hold significant historical and religious value, and they are scattered among many Alevi families in rural regions of Anatolia and the Balkans. Although these sources are traditionally stored with great care, often wrapped in cloth and placed within specialized containers, they are susceptible to deterioration and disintegration over time due to adverse environmental conditions and frequent handling. Moreover, they remain constantly vulnerable to the risk of complete destruction in natural disasters such as fires and earthquakes. In fact, the large earthquake that struck a vast region, including significant Alevi settlement areas in Eastern Anatolia in February 2023, resulted in the tragic loss of an unknown number of Alevi manuscripts and documents. Animated by these concerns, our project aims to establish a comprehensive web-based archive dedicated to documenting and digitally preserving the endangered historical and cultural heritage of Alevi-Bektashi communities in Anatolia and the Balkans. The focal point of this initiative is the digitization of historical documents and manuscripts that, as I said before, have been preserved in the private archives of Dede families across generations. This corpus of written sources, which includes documents and manuscripts in Turkish, Arabic, and Persian, dating mainly from the late 15th century to the early 20th century, includes sources such as, or documents such as ijazas or Sufi diplomas and certificates of spiritual succession, shajaras, or family genealogies containing lineage information, ziyaretnames, or pilgrimage records to sacred sites, religious and philosophical texts, collections of poems, and Dede's notebooks, and similar materials. By the way, Dede's notebooks are my latest fascination. In my earlier research, I overlooked them as unoriginal and incoherent, but now I realize that these personal notebooks from the late 19th and early 20th centuries can indeed be a great source for exploring Alevi-Bektashi religiosity and ritual practices. All right, but that's for another presentation, hopefully. Now, for this specific slide, of course, I selected images that demonstrate the extent of deterioration of certain documents and manuscripts in these private archives. They are clearly in urgent need of repair. Unfortunately, however, this task is way beyond the scope of our current project, as it requires significantly greater amounts of investment and resources that we cannot even imagine accessing at this point. So our objective for this project is entirely limited to creating digital copies of these documents before they become completely illegible or destroyed. Hopefully, someday somebody will actually make the kind of investment to also repair and preserve the originals of these documents and manuscripts. So in terms of our vision for the final product, I have to say that even though the focus will be on these written sources, it won't be limited, it won't be restricted to them alone. Even though they will continue being our primary focus, the ultimate, the final sort of archive is intended to include, in addition to electronic copies of documents and manuscripts from private archives, digital copies of photographs of people or objects of material culture, audiovisual recordings of Alevi traditional music and rituals. And another important component of the final product is as we envision it, will be an interactive map of Alevi villages and sacred sites that will also constitute the foundation of the larger project, which will be geographically organized. For now, we are mostly focusing on digitizing the written sources and on mapping the villages and the sacred sites, and not really spending much time with archiving the oral records, which are already more or less preserved in people's private homes. So we assume that we can get to that later. So. But eventually, it's going to be a much more comprehensive archive than just one that includes historical documents and manuscripts. This project is very much a public-facing project that puts a strong emphasis on public engagement, transparency, and cooperation with members of the Alevi-Bektashi communities. Once the project reaches a certain level of maturity, it will be opened up to the larger community through a dedicated website. And we envision that its digital repository will continue to expand with crowdsourced archives contributed by members of the Alevi-Bektashi community. We'll also hopefully be able to augment our interactive map with specific information for each village and sacred site through digital surveys, which we actually prepared. So we have 3 separate digital surveys, and we ask questions about people's Ocak affiliation, tribe affiliation, and questions about their village and stories related to the sacred sites and so on. So we are hoping that we'll collect that data on the internet and then somehow feed them into our existing repositories. We also hope to check for mistakes in our archives, such as misrecordings of names and duplications and so on, through this sort of online collaboration with members of the Alevi-Bektashi community. But again, this aspect of the project is also currently not our main priority. It's still in development. We are working on it. But we are currently more focused on establishing the archives, digital and archival infrastructure, so that we can move fast with the digitization of historical documents and manuscripts. We do actually have a website, but it's still in rudimentary stages and not yet accessible to the public. I can actually, maybe at the end of the presentation, I can show you the website. It's not that bad, but it's still, it's still a work in project, a work in progress. All right, so let me, without navigating the website, I will. So this is actually the website, the screenshot from the first page of the website. But without navigating through the website, just by using some screenshots, I want to showcase examples of the current state of the archive, and also try to explain our approach to its design. My apologies. Let's see. Okay. So as I said before, the entire archive is organized geographically, focusing on individual Alevi villages. So we have a map, an interactive map, which where every Alevi village that we have visited is marked. And then when this is, of course, these are just examples. We have many more villages where we digitize documents, but we are only including a handful of them by way of showcasing you how we are planning to work. So when you click on these pins, so each pin, of course, purple pin represents a village, and then you go into the folder for that village, and well, at first you'll see some information about the village, what ojaks are represented in the village and what languages are spoken and so on and so forth. And then you'll see a list of manuscripts and documents that were digitized on site in that village. Here, for example, is one manuscript that we digitized. My apologies. Sorry. Go back. All right. So this is a village in Adıyaman. The village is called Hozik. It's a Kurdish Alevi village. And this manuscript, which is actually a mejma, it's a collection of different works, but the main work that it contains is the famous Hurufi poet Virani's work known as Fakhrname. And so I actually digitized this a long time ago when I was doing my dissertation research, but we are also including all that material that I collected earlier in this archive. So what we do is we have prepared a detailed metadata form with about 30 questions, and that sort of includes information about the physical condition of the manuscript, its content, its provenance, and it's a very, very detailed metadata form. And so you see the picture of the manuscript, and then you access the metadata form. So what's the type, and what's the title, and then the date when it was copied, and then a summary of its content. So this is actually a much more detailed metadata form and questionnaire than is found in more commonly. Okay, and then we make a point about recording the owner of the manuscript of these sources, which ocak they belong to, what the name of the person is who is preserving the document. We deem this to be very important, you know, this sort of contextual information, provenance, you know, related to provenance. We deem it to be very, very important, and we make a point about recording it in detail. So the name of the village and all that information. And then, of course, you get to see the entire manuscript, each page scanned, right? So that's how we envision this part of the digital archive. So, and then let me show you some other examples here. So this is a village in Marash. The village is called Kantarma. It's a very famous Dede village, the center of the Sinemili Ocak. And so when you click on that village's name, I guess, then you get a list of the documents that we have digitized in that village. Of course, this example does not include all the documents that we have digitized in that village. There are many more documents from that village that we have digitized. But here I included just 3 examples. One of the documents is an ilam, like a document that you get from the court. Another one is a hujjat, which again, you know, is a document that you get from a court. And then a shejere, a Sayyid genealogy, a genealogy that shows that the family is a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad through the line of Ali and Fatima. So here is the metadata form for the first document. Again, the type of the document, the date, and you know, we have included all the details that we could possibly include in a metadata form. For example, here we also included the names of people who were who provided witness testimonies in this court case, so that when people do keyword searches, they can actually, you know, access information about individuals. All right. And then this is the second document. Oh, sorry, no, this is a picture. This is an image of the document. It's a 1-page document. And then here is the shejere that I mentioned, the Sayyid genealogy. Again, you know, you have all the information. I'm not showing you all the metadata, but you know, you have the metadata form, all the information, and then you have an image of the document. These genealogies and the Sufi diplomas, they are usually in the form of long scrolls. So we can only digitize them, you know, a piece at a time, which is kind of a problem, but you know, that's unfortunately what we have to work with. Okay, so and then we are, even though our focus, I said, is on digitizing manuscripts and documents, while we are at it, while we are, you know, doing our field work in villages, we are also taking photographs of items of material culture, and will those are also included in the archive from the get-go. Here, for example, this is a village in Amasya, and you know, there's this interesting object that they use in their communal rituals, which is actually a sword. Typically in Alevi rituals, they use a sacred stick as part of the ritual of ikrar, I suppose. But in this village, there is this, and in some other places, I have seen the same thing. There's this more sort of rare practice of using the sword in, you know, as a sacred stick, basically. But yeah, so these are the kind of sacred objects that we are trying to document, and before they get destroyed, because it's very likely that, you know, the person who's preserving this is a relatively aged Dede, and once he passes away, it's possible that his children or his grandchildren will not even recognize its value and probably get rid of it. I don't know. So as I said before, Alevis have been living mostly in urban centers and leading very secular lives, and the newer generations do not care as much about these traditional objects and manuscripts and so on. All right, so now this is the last part of my presentation. I wonder what time it is. I hope I'm. Sorry, Zeynep, I don't have my watch. How much time have I used so far?
Oh, it's only half an hour, so please go ahead as much as you
Okay,
want.
perfect. Okay, yeah. I don't want to go any longer than 45 minutes because I know it will get boring, and then, we should have some time for Q&A. All right, so the last part of my presentation will tell you a little bit about the progress that we have made so far, and what our objectives in the near future are, and what kind of challenges we are facing. And perhaps, I can get some advice from you if you, there might be among you people who have done this sort of job before and might have some great ideas. All right, so when we think of the project in 3 levels, as a digital humanities project, so like planning, development, and execution, I guess I can say that so far we have primarily focused on the planning and development phases of the archival and digital infrastructure of the project. So archival and digital infrastructure, those are two separate things. And more specifically, they include, and we did establish, so they include establishment of archival categories, the devising of cataloging of a cataloging system, and designing a detailed metadata form in both English and Turkish, and the creation of an online digital survey of online digital surveys, again, in both languages. So those are the things that we have done so far. I'm sorry, I sort of said it in a confusing manner, but so far we establish our archival categories, we devise a cataloging system, we designed a detailed metadata form in both languages, and also created online digital surveys, again, in both languages. Of course, I have to acknowledge here that all of that was made possible with the invaluable assistance and support provided by William & Mary's Library, William & Mary Library's digital services team, particularly Deborah Cornell and Erica Moses. I don't know if they are here today, but without their guidance, which helped me immensely in navigating the complexities of creating an archival infrastructure, I would not have been able to do any of this. So I'm really grateful to them for their help. I'm also grateful to Lindsay Rogers and Erin Oregon from William & Mary Center for Geospatial Analysis, who not only compiled from different sources a list of Alevi villages and sacred sites and marked them on an interactive map, but they also digitized the surveys and constructed the project's test website, which, again, if you have time, I'm more than happy to show them to you. So then, we have more or less established the archival and digital infrastructure of the project, even though there is still room for improvement, of course. In terms of the execution of the project, and this is the part that was funded by ERIT and NEH, which, I received the grant last fall, and that grant allowed me to take the semester off for research, and I'm really grateful for that. So in the fall and the summer before that, we actually conducted a pilot project covering various regions in Anatolia. And we tested the process of digitizing materials on site using a portable scanner, again, provided by William & Mary's libraries. And we did so traveling from town to town and from village to village. Now, these test runs demonstrated the feasibility of digitizing documents on site using a portable scanner, although I must say it was occasionally physically demanding. Here I have a map of which shows the locations we visited last summer and in the fall for the project, as recorded by the Google Maps location app. So these are all the areas that I visited. And so, I mean, you know, traveling is difficult, but digitizing dozens of manuscripts and documents is even more demanding. And at this point, I should also acknowledge the invaluable assistance of Özkan Karabulut, who is currently preparing a dissertation at Harvard University, partly utilizing the historical Alevi manuscripts collected as part of this project, and our volunteer Taylan Özdemir, both of whom sometimes stayed up all night scanning manuscripts. It was really a demanding job, and I'm really grateful to both of them. Another thing we accomplished during these trips is that we were able to test our digital surveys. We tested them with a number of elderly individuals in the villages. And based on that experience, we have made and will continue making certain modifications in our digital surveys, sometimes reframing questions or shortening questions and so on. Now, overall, these trips were incredibly rewarding, exceeding our expectations in terms of the number of materials we found and scanned. In fact, we made several unique and significant discoveries. I mean, as you might imagine, not everything that we end up scanning is necessarily super original or an unknown source. You know, a lot of them are actually known works. But every once in a while, we came across documents and manuscripts that were really unique and really unknown before. For example, one of my favorites is a 16th century Bektashi icazetname that we found and digitized in Amasya. And I really hope that we have the opportunity to publish it in the not too distant future, because we really, you know, except one Bektashi Jaza that was recently discovered by Yeliz Teber at Oxford University, from like a draft of a Bektashi Jaza from the late 15th century. All other Bektashi Jazas that we have known in the field date from the 19th and 20th century. So this is a really unique find. All right, so what about the future or near future? Now, at this point, really, we have an enormous task ahead of us to digitize materials in locations across Anatolia that we have not yet visited, and there are many, many of them, as well as, of course, in the Balkans. We have actually made very little progress on the Balkan leg of the project thus far, but I'm hoping that we'll get some work done next summer in Bulgaria, Greece, and Albania. Okay, so so we need to do that first. So, you know, there's still a lot of sort of digitizing that needs to be undertaken. And additionally, of course, metadata creation for all the documents and manuscripts we have scanned and will scan in the future is another major undertaking. I mean, those of you who have done it will know how difficult it is to create those metadata forms with all the detailed information about each and every manuscript and document. Needless to say, for both of these tasks, we will need a much larger group of collaborators and trained volunteers, which, you know, we don't have yet, but, you know, we are working on it. Additionally, of course, the website design and maintenance component requires a more long-term institutionalized effort and commitment, which at this point we are still missing. So we are also, missing, an institute. So not only are we missing an institutional home for this archive, again, we are working on it, but we are also missing still a partner archive in Turkey, which is required by a lot of sort of major grants, which is ethically the appropriate thing to do. So, I mean, we never collect the originals of these manuscripts or documents anyway, but even then, these images of the documents and manuscripts should stay within Turkey in a local archive, and in finding a partner archive in Turkey is a challenging task as well. And of course, and I'll explain why that is the case. There are a few candidates, but the broader sort of challenge that sort of relates to all these other challenges is, of course, the finding a larger grant to fund the expansion of this project. So now we have accomplished the pilot, the pilot form, but we need to expand the project and move from the pilot project into the full-scale project, which will definitely require additional funding so that we can, take off time from teaching and recruit volunteers and pay expenses and so on and so forth. Now, there are several grants available that could be suitable for our project. In fact, when I applied for the ERIT NEH grants, my original idea was, and it still is really, was to utilize the pilot project we conducted in the fall as a prototype for applying for a larger grant. However, we are facing some technical and legal obstacles due to the unique, or ethical really, rather than legal, I should probably say ethical obstacles, due to the unique nature of the materials we intend to digitize, which are obviously, sacred or semi-sacred and private archives of families. So, I spent a year and a half during my dissertation research and several summers afterwards visiting Alevi families in different parts of Turkey to collect copies or photos or images of Alevi documents and manuscripts, many of which I use in my scholarly publications. Additionally, as I became a relatively well-known and trusted researcher, individual Alevis have also started sending me via the internet, via email or Facebook, copies of documents and manuscripts from their family archives. However, my use of these sources in my research rested solely on the verbal agreement of the archive's owners. And that's how researchers do in Turkey, so I'm not the only one who have published a document or a manuscript from a private family archive and solely on the basis of a verbal agreement. But to be able to work within an institutional framework, we obviously need written permissions. Now, getting written permission, although a little harder in Turkey compared to, for example, in the United States, because people are more reluctant to sign off a document in general. It's difficult, but it is doable. In fact, one of the things that we did in the fall and in the summer was, we actually, I went back to the families whose documents I had texture, whose documents I took pictures from, and some of them I actually published. So I went back to these families and we signed a written permission form, which I prepared again with the help of the staff at the William and Mary libraries. So here, this is the form that I came up with, again, with the help of many people. And, people are okay signing this permission form because they realize it's actually going to protect them because, with this permission form, they are actually saying, my family archives can only be used for purposes of research, exhibition, and whatnot, cannot be shared with other people, cannot be sold for economic gain, and so on and so forth. So this is doable. But most grants or most institutional archives that we have looked into actually want the owners to transfer all copyright to that institution or to that archive, which in this case would not really be ethically appropriate, again, because these are special kind of sources that are sacred or semi-sacred for these families. I mean, there are even grants which only fund projects that digitize documents and manuscripts which are already in the country. I'm speaking, obviously, in this case, about the United States, right? Because I'm at a university in the United States, so we can apply for grants as an institution. But in many cases there are severe restrictions, and in this case the main obstacle for us that has prevented us from sort of finding a collaborator, like a partner archive in Turkey as well, is this whole issue of signing off copyright to these archives, to these institutions. And, if anybody has any ideas or suggestions about that, I would be grateful and would love to hear that. So let me see if I can maybe wrap up by yeah, this is the website. Can you see the website?
No, you need to share your screen once again.
Oh, all right. Okay, let me see. So share screen. All right. Again, this is just a test website. We are still working on it. Can you see it now? Let me see if I can.
Yes, we can.
I need to maximize. All right. So it's both in Turkish and in English. This is a very basic website. So what the project is all about and the contributors. Actually, I forgot to thank people who hosted us when we were doing field work, who took us to places. They were just absolutely wonderful. Again, without their help doing field work, without the hospitality of members of the Alevi-Bektashi community, this kind of field work would have been completely out of question. So these are like the kind of manuscripts, like, you go to a family and they have 10 manuscripts that we need to scan in a day. So we stay up all night scanning things, especially Özkan and Taylan did that. And then, of course, as we were traveling, we have seen some very interesting, architectural sort of artifacts as well. Like this is, for example, an old-fashioned cemevi with the unique ceiling structure that we call kırlangıç çatı. They no longer use it as a cemevi, but you come across some very interesting things when you actually go to and visit these villages. Here's an old, like over 90 years old dede who is reading from his junk, so from his collection of poetry. So the myth that somehow the dedes were shamans or something and did not know how to read and write. They were just ignorant. Those are all kind of stereotypes that our project kind of inadvertently debunks, right? Here's a dede who reads from his own junk. So this is these are the, villages and sacred sites, but there are a lot of duplicates here. So this is just a preliminary map. And, if you click on one of these marks, then you'll be taken to a particular villages folder, basically. So these are just some photos, again. I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of photos that I couldn't include in my PowerPoint. I even haven't been able to go through them yet, but there are just some wonderful, beautiful pictures. Let me sort of wrap up by saying how this project once again taught me the importance for historians to do field work, because it's one thing to work on a manuscript or a written document and sort of try to reconstruct a history out of those. It's a completely different experience, a completely different thing to actually visit those communities or areas whose histories you are trying to reconstruct and understand. All right, I think I'll stop here, Zeynep. I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little bit weak, but I hope this presentation was clear enough. Thank you.
It was. Thank you. And first of all, geçmiş olsun to you. I hope
Teşekkürler.
you'll recover very soon. Thank you so much. I mean, both for the presentation and for this incredible contribution to scholarship, because what you're doing is a tremendous amount of work, as you outlined all the goals and all the places that you visited, and as well as all the challenges and factors at play, both from, trying to find funding to all these copyright issues, and also, of course, our, changing circumstances, moving on to a modern society, and how people, somehow losing their connection to their lineages. I mean, there's like so much food for thought there. And there are already a lot of, comments and questions. What a fascinating project. And also the interface looks very good. One of our attendees commented, and there's also a request to put the link in the chat, but I guess the website is not live yet for us, right?
It's
But do
not.
you have a kind of a website name that you're considering, or are you planning, once you make it live, planning to make an announcement, like a distribution of
Well, not in the immediate future, because we are
mm,
still working on it. But yeah, we don't even have a domain name yet. So we
mhm.
are still playing around with format and all that.
Okay. Well, there's already another question. Are there any plans to expand the scope of the project, maybe to include more objects and built environments?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the items of material culture and built environments like the old historical cemevies, I find that to be just as important and fascinating as sort of digitizing these historical documents and manuscripts. Uh, because I'm not an art historian, all I can do is really take pictures of these places when I see them, which is unfortunate, because I mean, I think there's a lot to be done from a art history, from the perspective of art history in these villages. But yeah, no, absolutely. I do my best. We do our best to at least document them by taking their pictures. And we'll hopefully put more emphasis on that as we move along. Yeah.
Okay, two more questions. What more can you say about the Alevi-Bektashi relationship than you could before? And what is an Alevi village? How do you define this?
Well, an Alevi village is a village where Alevis live, right? There are, of course, villages where Alevis and Sunnis live as mixed communities, but they are not very common, really. Most of the time, an Alevi village is a village where most of the inhabitants are actually Alevi. But of course, we cannot, as part of this project, visit, each and every Alevi village. We have compiled a list of like 5,000 Alevi villages. Again, there are lots of duplicates there, and it doesn't even include the Balkan leg yet. So that's impossible. So for our project, we mostly focus on villages where Dede families live. And because these archives belong to Dede families, right? So mostly those are the kind of villages that we try to locate and visit. In terms of Alevi-Bektashi relations, well, that's a very interesting question. So basically, Alevi-Bektashi relations is a fascinating topic, and it's an issue that I also touch on in my book. Basically, what I argue in my book, and without sort of getting into all the details, what I argue in my book is that the view of sort of the Alevis being village Bektashis is not only overly simplified, but also false. The relations, over the centuries have been much more complicated than that, with a lot of ups and downs. So when you actually go to the villages, you see that people traditionally differentiate between, for example, Bektashis and Husseinis. Bektashis being Alevi communities who are attached to the Hacı Bektaş Dergah in Kırşehir, and then Husseinis being those communities who are historically attached to the convent in the courtyard of the shrine complex of Imam Hussein, which, according to historical documents, belonged to the Abdals of Rum in the mid-16th century. So clearly there were different sort of communities that made up this Alevi-Bektashi umbrella, if you will, and sort of one of the main differentiating factors here is, which dergah they felt attached to, which dergah they turned to for certification. Of course, after, like in modern times, as it became harder and harder for Dedes to visit Iraq, to go to the Abdal convent in the courtyard of Imam Hussein's shrine, I don't think that convent actually exists anymore. So they turned their faces to the Çelebi-Bektashis. So it's a very sort of interesting and complicated relationship. By the way, recently a dissertation has been completed at the University of Oxford by Yeliz Teber, who looks specifically at the Çelebi-Bektashis and their relations with the rest of the Alevi communities. So that might be an interesting read for everybody.
And actually, from there, we are moving on to Yeliz Teber's question to you.
Oh, really? She's here. Hi, Yeliz.
Thank you very much for the presentation and undertaking this very crucial project. I just wonder roughly how many documents, manuscripts, and artifacts you have located during the pilot project.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, okay, so first of all, I have to say that, I already had images of dozens or probably hundreds of documents and manuscripts from my earlier field work, right? In those days, of course, I did not have a portable scanner. I simply took, pictures with a digital camera. So excluding those, we have probably collected, I mean, Özkan is here. I haven't really counted how many manuscripts and how many documents we have digitized just this last fall and summer, but definitely dozens of manuscripts and also documents. Maybe Özkan has a better idea about that. Özkan, how many do you think have you digitized?
I also actually don't know, but just for one family, Ocak family, I remember from the different family members, we scanned more than 70 documents and manuscripts.
Yeah.
Is that
one
Ocak?
Which one was that?
Sheikh Shahzoja.
Sheikh Sanzoja. Yeah. No, there's a lot, and we really need to go through them and create metadata forms for them. And we haven't really been able to do that because, we have done our field work and then came back to teach and, we really haven't had the time. But I should also add one other sort of caveat here, and Özkan can also comment on that. So sort of one of the methodological problems that we have faced was, so like, our naive assumption was that when we go and look at these collections in the private archives of Dede families, that we would only find uniquely Alevi-Bektashi works, right? But then, of course, we saw that, these people, they were readers and they read books that were not specifically Alevi-Bektashi in nature. They would just go and buy books. This is particularly true for like books that were published in the 19th and early 20th century. So we just couldn't decide what to do with those types of published books or handwritten works. We had to make a decision as to whether we should even, include them in our archive or whether we should simply ignore them as non-Alevi, non-Bektashi. And then we ended up deciding that we should, scan those as well. Although in some cases, due to lack of time, we only scanned the first few pages just so that we had a record of it. So there are all kinds of sort of methodological issues that have come up that we still sort of are struggling with. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Özkan.
No, I mean, you already mentioned that there are many printed books too. So the sake of time, we also just like scanned some like first pages and last pages and important reader notes, marginalia. But I hope we can extend our project on them.
Right, because then the question moves from one being, like sort of Alevi-Bektashi literature per se versus what did Alevi Dedes read? What were their reading and writing practices? So like we have to somehow shift back and forth between those two questions as our sort of guiding principle in establishing this archive.
Thank you. And actually talking about the content, our next question is about your capture methods. Like in the description of manuscripts, are you able to capture the material aspects such as binding, paper, watermarks, which would be important for dating, and paratexts like ownership stamps and reader's notes?
Right.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So, we do make notes about the physical qualities of the manuscripts and documents, and we do capture the watermarks, take pictures of them. I mean, as for paper types, to be honest with you, I'm not an expert in that regard. So, Özkan, did we even note, make notes about the type of paper used? You know those things better than I do, but I don't think we make notes of that, right?
No, me neither.
Yeah, we only, so we measure the size and then capture the watermark. Definitely, any kind of notes regarding provenance, ownership, those types of things, we definitely make sure to record and capture, yes.
And adding another layer to your already quite comprehensive project is actually asking, Fahri Dikbay is asking, are you considering adding an archaeological survey to your project, especially to better understand the material culture of the Alevis and the localization change of the settlements?
Maybe Fahri Hoca can join us to do that. No, absolutely. There's so much that needs to be done that's beyond my area of expertise,
Yeah.
but also like in terms of resources, right? I mean, the three of us, we traveled, to all these places, and it was physically extremely demanding just to sort of digitize these written sources. So yeah, I mean, all we can do is take pictures of sort of buildings, and also if we come across some interesting tombstones, for example, yeah, we try to take pictures of those, but that's about all we do really in terms of material culture and architecture and, well, settlement patterns, like, oh my gosh, don't, yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot that can be done.
I actually have a question since you mentioned about these cultivating relationships with these communities, which is really important to build trust and to, let them actually, access to these family archives and also, you mentioned this community aspect. So when you're going to these villages, are there anyone from there who could also help you in terms of either photographing or interested in, I don't know, how to safeguard these in, I don't know, whatever proper storage they at least do for further deterioration of these paperworks, or interested in digital capture so that you also have some, I don't know what to call them, like, but some people in the community who is kind of interested in safeguarding these documents in proper care for the future.
Right, yeah. I mean, first of all, I have to say, even though it was the three of us who were, member, traveling, everywhere we went, we also got help from people. Like, people helped us digitize these manuscripts. They work with us. But I know that's not your question. Your question is more about like what can be done locally
Yeah.
for the preservation of these resources. Now, so one thing that happens is I think when people see that, especially members of the younger generation, when they see that these scholars are actually interested in this material, that kind of signals to them that there might be something valuable. I mean, in most cases, I mean, it's only the elderly, the older generations, especially dedes, who value these documents, who still preserve these documents. The younger generations don't care as much because they can't read them. They don't know what's in it, and they are a little too secularized, I suppose, and too modern to even care. I mean, like, for example, dedes notebooks, nobody cares about them, but they are just a source of incredibly valuable information about Alevi traditional rituals and religiosity. So, but when they see us, like outsiders coming in, scholars coming in, and trying to sort of preserve at least images of these documents, I think that also kind of alerts them to their significance, and hopefully, it will sort of help younger generations to sort of be more cognizant of the value of these resources, and be more protective of them. But again, this is something that is kind of beyond our limits. It's something that probably Alevi organizations should take up on themselves, which so far I have seen a great reluctance, in part because, now this is kind of interesting, but again, Alevis are a very secular and sort of modern-minded bunch nowadays, very left-leaning, and these documents and manuscripts, for them, they're just too religious, I suppose, and they don't care as much about preserving that aspect of their tradition. Again, I don't want to generalize, and I don't want to sort of put them on spot here, but yeah, I mean, it's really the Alevi organizations need to do something about it. They obviously, there is very little trust in the government doing something like this. In fact, okay, so I want to say here that a lot of these documents, in fact, their originals have been collected by various scholars and researchers in Turkey who work at universities in Turkey. So there's also that going on. So it's not like none of the Alevi like none of the Alevi dedes are willing to share these documents with state universities or state institutions. But there is a group who doesn't feel comfortable about that. So yeah, so we are not the only ones basically who are interested in these documents. We are the only group who is doing this so that we can share it with the larger public. Whereas other researchers that get, they either collect the originals or copies of these documents and manuscripts, but they keep it for themselves. Whereas what we want to do is we want to make it available for the public and preserve it in digital form.
Thank you. And in the meantime, there are multiple questions pouring into the chat. Let me start with this one. You already mentioned that your plate was full, but I'm curious if in your future fieldwork, would you be considering conducting formal interviews? Those exchanges might give us important information about Alevi practices of preservation, or as you briefly mentioned, their complicated relationship with signing papers and sharing these papers in general.
Right, specifically with regard to the ownership of these sacred documents and their protection, I don't think we do have any planned formal interviews, but we do have these digital surveys, which are kind of formal interviews, which with the sort of the older populations, you'll need somebody to actually ask those questions and enter the answers online. For younger people who are comfortable using a computer, they can sort of answer those questions online by themselves. But beyond that, yeah, I think, that's something that we should be looking into, but so far we haven't really done it. But I also have to say that there has been a greater emphasis in Alevi-Bektashi studies in sort of collecting oral sources, like through interviews and so on. I cannot say that it has been done in a systematic fashion. I sometimes question the systematicness of those studies, trying to collect oral traditions. But despite that, we have more of those. What we don't have is these sort of written sources, a record of these written sources, and that's what we are emphasizing. But all of these are wonderful ideas. I hope we had the time and resources. Özkan, here's another task for you.
Yeah, and in terms of, again, oral tradition, the next question is about at what point in the future do you think that cultural heritage in terms of Alevi-Bektashi nefesler, deyişler in documents or notebooks of zakirs or notebooks or recordings of Alevi aşıks and audio and video recordings of jams and muhabbets will become a part of the project?
Yeah. Like a lot of people have been recording their gems and have been sort of recording their sohbets with their dedes and so on. So they're already, somewhere in people's private archives. And several individuals have contacted me and they said, they would be more than happy to contribute their recordings, video or audio recordings to our archive. I also have a ton of stuff, since because I've been doing fieldwork since 1995. I have I don't know how I'm going to do it, but first I need to go through them and add keywords and so on and so forth. So it's really that part that we haven't gotten to yet, like kind of archiving them and so on. So there are already a lot of video and audio recordings of these traditional rituals. And in terms of the nefes and the deyish in these defters and other sources here, I'm going to show you. Where's the first page here? So there is this Risale / notebook that we have been working on with. Is Yasemin here? Yasemin, I don't know if she's here, but from who is actually a literature person. I can't find the first page for some reason, but anyway, I'll show you, these are just pages from it. And this is a very interesting Risale because it was published, it was put together, it was written down by a Bektashi who wanted to have this as a guide for Dedes. This is from Kütahya. This manuscript is from Kütahya. I'm still looking for the first page, but I can't find it. That's too bad. But he entitled it Aynı Erkan. And to our surprise, and I was just thrilled to see this Risale / notebook, because he goes through the entire gem and in detail explains what to do at each point, what prayer to say, where to get up for Semah, and so on and so forth. This was put together in the early 20th century in Arabic script. And what we are doing right now is we are transcribing the Risale. Yasemin is here, actually, Yasemin Karakush. And then our next step is to compare it with our oral sources from that region, from that specific ocak. In fact, there has been cases where we couldn't read a word, and then we actually asked people in that region. They knew the word. There's every once in a while this unique vocabulary that that has been forgotten. That's not being used anymore. So what we are doing is then we are kind of comparing this written source with our sort of oral, with the oral tradition that's still alive or remembered in that part of the region. That's what we are doing. I don't know if this was the answer to the question.
But there is actually a question that is
Okay,
about
yeah.
the project, and I'm curious if you found any relationship between attitudes toward documents and their preservation among families and the current state of ritual practice, muhabbet, gem, etc., in the various villages you visited. So
Yeah. No, I mean, again, we were just totally fascinated. Just yesterday, we were reading a part of this Risale where the Dede said, in parentheses, he said, people get up for Semah at this point. And then we actually listened to a recording of a gem, like in Germany in 2023. And that's exactly the point at which the Dede said, okay, get up for Semah. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. There are also differences, of course. But no, for the most part, especially for the sort of the gem rituals, their depictions in these sources are very close to how they are practiced today, which is fascinating. I mean, I really think it's fascinating.
Along the same lines, actually, since we are talking about now your findings, there is another question: was there anything new to you, or anything that you found beyond your assumptions regarding Alevi rituals and belief system prior to your surveys?
Let me see. Let me think. I mean, interesting things happened. I mean, first of all, one of the most interesting finding, I suppose, is that these people were readers, avid readers. I mean, I think Özkan is nodding, and this is also his research, actually, reading and writing practices of Alevi Dedes. I mean, we were totally blown away to see how widely they read. So that was sort of the most interesting finding. And, they read, everything from Hadith collections to the Bible. I don't know, like they had, in one family archive, we found one of the first editions of Atatürk's Nutuk, for example. I don't know. So interesting stuff like that. In terms of beliefs and practices, I'm trying to think. I don't remember, but some quite interesting things happened, which once again taught me the importance of doing field work, especially if you're trying to sort of study the history of a marginalized communities as the Alevi-Bektashis. I don't know if I can tell the story properly, but so we went to Amasya. That picture of a dede who was reading his junk, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
He's like over 90 years old. And I had known him since 2001, I think. So like, this wasn't the first time that I met him, but then this time we went to him to look at his junks and collections of poetry, which is what Özkan is interested in. And then while we were in the village, this Alevi TV channel, they wanted to, they invited us to a program. They said, oh, we heard that you're doing this project, would you be willing to, tell us a little bit about that? And I said, well, no, we can't really do that because we will be in a village in Amasya, I can't really connect. And they said, well, no, it's okay. It's even better. Like if you're, doing field work actively at the time. So we connected, and then the dede was with me, and I thought it would be really cool for the dede to read from his junk and say a few things, right? So he did speak, but then at some point, I don't know, maybe he thought he was, it was TRT or something, I don't know. He felt obliged to say how he was just as well versed in Sunni Islam as Alevism, and how he actually served as an imam in the village mosque while he was also serving as a dede in the Cemevi. And and then he recited a prayer or some ayah, or something from the Quran in Arabic, which kind of surprised us. And then, once we were done with the interview, we asked Dedes, I said, Dede, I never knew that you actually served as an imam. And then he explained how that came to happen. He said, they built a mosque in our village, and they were going to appoint an imam, like the Diyanet was going to appoint a Sunni imam. So I thought, rather than having them appoint a Sunni imam, I'll ask them to appoint me as an imam. But of course, to be able to do that, you need to be recognized as an imam. So he had to take all these tests and, pass or something, like get a certificate, right? So he studied, and he did indeed get the certificate, but he still wouldn't be appointed as an imam. So he took the Diyanet to court, and for, was it 9 years, Özkan? So something
Yes.
like that. So after 9 years, like the courts, with the help of the courts, he was appointed as an imam to this mosque. Now, I would have, like, then I thought, well, if I had seen that this dede served as an imam, just on some document, on some archival document, my assumption about it would be very different, as opposed to now, like actually having the background story to it, which made me realize how crucially important it is, to actually go and talk to these people and get the, backstories. That's why, like, especially for people doing family histories, it's so important to go and talk to these individuals. I think that was probably, for me, the most eye-opening experience. I don't know if Özkan, do you want to add something?
I mean, that was really surprising for me too. And I want to add, like, this, that Haydar Dede was arrested in 1990, since he had a book of Lenin alphabeti.
Yeah, no, this was after the 1980 military coup, right? They came and searched his house, and they confiscated a book by Lenin and his, what was it?
Makteli Hüseyin.
And Makteli Hussein. And he was like, oh, they took my Makteli Hussein and Lenin's, what is it? The Lenin, what was the title?
Lenin'in alfabesi.
Lenin alphabet. He was like really annoyed by that. So he was politically also very left-leaning. But then, he was an imam, right? So.
Oh, amazing stories. Now moving on to some technical questions. What kind of scanning system are you using?
What kind of what?
scanning system.
Ugh.
So, I mean, maybe portable, scanners you
It's a
mentioned,
portable
but
scanner. I can go back and show. Let me see. Microsoft here. Okay, so we only have one scanner. This
Mhm.
was provided by my university's digital services department. Again, thank you, Debbie and Erica. And yeah, they set it up. They set it all up for us, and I just basically we carry that with us to places, and that's what we do. Yeah, but beyond that, I really don't know if what type of a scanner this is or what different types there are. If the person has a specific recommendation or idea, I would actually love to hear that.
Mhm. Another question is about transliteration. Will the documents be transliterated?
Obviously, we cannot transliterate all of the documents. This is a question that a request that we get from families all the time. And we try to explain to them that there are hundreds and hundreds of documents. And a lot of them are, like, for example, if it's a shejere, it's very formulaic, right? I mean, you have sort of praises and prayers in the beginning. And then there's really a short section, which says Ammabad, and then it explains the reason why the shejere was given and to whom it was given. So, oftentimes I tell them, I can tell you, who acquired this shejere, when, and from which region the person was, but that's about it. There's no way, we have no time to transcribe everything word by word, and there's really no point in doing that, even though I understand why families want that. I mean, the other thing is, even if you transcribe the document, it really won't make much sense to somebody who's not trained as a historian, not only because the language is old, but also, like, unless you contextualize the document, it doesn't really mean much. So, but these metadata forms, if you can actually really create these forms for each and every manuscript and document, that would be immensely useful, because that will give all the crucial information about these items.
Yeah. Thank you. I guess these are all the questions that I see on the chat. And Filiz Hocam, please.
Hocam sesinizi kapalı.
Yes. I wanted to unmute, and thank you very much for a really marvelous presentation. And I had a question about the connection between Alevi and Bektashi, communities. But my other question is, would you, in the future, include, someone said, archaeological, but more than that, you need architectural historians also, I think. For instance, we have at my own university many studies, and Zeynep would know Günkut's PhD is. Do you know him?
No, I haven't.
Do you know?
Zeynep
Günkut, for instance, the dome or the roof structure that you called kırlangıç is tütektikli. Have you heard the word? Tütektikli. Yes, that's the technical term.
Yeah.
And for instance, there's a professor. She's currently at another university, but she's very open-minded about these buildings, because she's a granddaughter of one of the most important dedes of Malatya. So
Okay.
this kind of, yes.
Who's this person?
Hülya Turgut.
Okay, and which university?
Özyeğin.
Oh,
Özyeğin.
yeah, I didn't know her. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all Günkut Akın's PhDs, of course, Zeynep would know. Yeah, and he worked on many of the structures. And
Okay.
therefore, it's crucial that maybe such an important study should include some architectural historians or maybe people from other fields also.
Right.
Thank you
right.
very much, though, for
Right.
doing this. Because as an architectural historian, I have always been very much interested in finding out what happened in Anatolia, and Zeynep is doing this. So at the Technical University, we have done some research into the historical background. So,
Right.
but of course, not such a comprehensive study as yours. So it's going to be very, very important. So maybe you would contact some of the architectural historians also. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Filiz Hocam. It's really gratifying to hear these, beautiful words from you. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I actually did not know about Hülya Turgut and Günkut Akın's work,
Akın.
which is my sort of, I actually feel ashamed. I should
He's
have.
retired. He's retired and lives in Bodrum. But Hülya is, I just met her a few months ago at
Okay.
Özyeğin. So
All
she's still, but she's not, I mean, she hasn't studied very much her own background, but of course she's a granddaughter of one of the most important dedes from Malatya. So maybe you could.
Do you know her, Ocak? I'm just kidding.
No.
Okay. All right.
No, but she says her dede, real dede, I mean, not grandfather,
Yeah.
was one of the most important dedes of Turkey. So maybe you can ask her what she knows.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, many years ago, Mahir Polat did a dissertation on all these cemevis. In fact, I might take a little bit of credit for that because he was really hesitant to do so. He just didn't think there was enough material out there, and I encouraged him to focus on these old cemevis because there was this assumption that cemevi is an entirely modern phenomenon. Obviously, in its current form, it is a modern phenomenon, but there were special places, to hold these gems with sort of distinctive architectural features. So Mahir Polat actually visited several different historical cemevis and did a dissertation, but then he entered politics, and unfortunately, we lost him. Unfortunately for the field. And now he's sort of more into the high culture of the Ottoman Empire, I guess. But yeah, yeah, some work has been done, and obviously there are others that I'm not aware of. So hopefully, once we find the kind of institutional and financial support, and we have the necessary monetary and human resources, definitely, that's one direction that we should expand the project into, because these places, they're collapsing, right? We have seen a lot of the old maidans, where they held gems, which are in ruins already. And of course, given the earthquakes, these are not like solid buildings, obviously, right? So absolutely, that should be one of our top priorities. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the modern day cemevi architecture leaves quite a lot to be desired.
Exactly.
I mean, what is a Corinthian column doing there? Have
Yeah.
you seen the one at Karacaahmet?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are Corinthian columns in front of the building.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. No,
crazy.
it is. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing is, unfortunately, these turbes and historical cemevis, and so some urbanized members of these ocaks, of course, thinking that they are doing something important and valuable, they go and renovate them, right? And then they turn these into modern kitchens almost, with marbles,
Yes.
and, wherever I go, I tell them, please, don't do this and get some help. And, but these are all things that require resources and people who actually know one or two things about this. I mean, there's one village which in Elazığ, Karakoçan, which is a center of the Ocak of Cemal Abdal. In fact, Mahir, it's one of the places where Mahir Polat worked. I told him about this place, and they did some renovations which are actually quite good. I think Mahir Polat kind of probably helped them out a little bit. But no, yeah, I mean, that's another sort of big issue here. Once they are renovated, there's nothing left of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much, Filiz Hocam. Thank you.
Thank you, Filiz. And also, I would like to thank Debbie Cornell as well for sharing the link to the scanner information for those of you who are interested in the scanner that Ayfer used. You can see the link at the chat. And if there are no other questions, maybe we can wrap it up for tonight. Thank you for everything that you are doing, and çok kolay gelsin too. It's a huge project to you and to Özkan and also to all of your collaborators.
Thank you so
And
much,
hopefully
Zeynep.
once the website becomes live in the future, you can share it with us. And also as the project progresses, we'll be more than happy to have you back for another presentation at ARIT.
Wonderful. Yeah, I would be very happy to do that. And I'm glad that the medication worked, actually. I haven't sneezed or, had to wipe my nose as much as I thought I would. But thank you so much for, sticking with me and for your patience. And again, all the individuals in the audience who have helped with the project. And I see Debbie and Özkan is here. If there's somebody else whom I am unable to see, thank you so much for all your support and help. Thank you.
Thank you all, and geçmiş olsun to you again.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Oh,
Okay.
thank you, Nancy, as well, of course.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So
Have a good night, everyone.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.